So let's talk about how people can build on good credit practices over
Sure.
time. What are some of those best practices?
Yeah, I would say, especially after you have that first investment under your belt and it's generating some cash flow, would be to build some of those other C's of credit that we talked about. Build up some liquidity, build up some money that you can inject into the next project, more money. So, the lower the loan to value or the more down payment that you're putting into the project makes it a safer deal for the bank. So that could affect your interest rate. If you're putting more money into a project and you've got a lot of liquidity, you likely could be looking at a better interest rate than somebody who is maxing out some of those limits.
Thanks for joining us on another REI-NWA Podcast. This is episode number 62, and as always, I'm your host, Coley Bailey with Lone Rock Realty. And today, we're going to be digging into investor credit, particularly investor credit for beginners. So, you got your first rental property, or you're doing your first flips, and you got some money. What do you do with that? How does it affect your credit? What does your credit profile look like to lenders and other partners potentially? So to help me with that, I want to introduce you to Kyle Patillo.
Hey.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Yeah,
good to be here.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us.
You bet.
And you're at Farmers and Merchants Bank.
Yes, Farmers and Merchants Bank, Northwest Arkansas. We're also the Bank of Fayetteville.
Okay.
It's the same bank. Farmers and Merchants Bank acquired the Bank of Fayetteville in end of 2015, but it's the same bank. Bank of Fayetteville has such a strong name here. We decided to keep that. But statewide, we're Farmers and Merchants Bank.
Okay, fantastic. So, before we get into the topic a little bit, let's learn about you.
Sure.
Where'd you come from? How'd you get to doing what you're doing now?
Right. So I was born and raised in Stuttgart. My father was a banker. My mom was a real estate agent. And a small town of Stuttgart needed a commercial real estate appraiser. So they had mentioned that to me during my college days, and I took an interest to that. So in college here at the University of Arkansas, took all the appraisal classes, and one of my professors helped me get a job with an appraisal firm here in Springdale. Went to work for them doing research my senior year, and they hired me after college, and I became a real estate appraiser. Went through the ranks there and became a commercial appraiser and did that for about 5 years or so. Had already gotten my real estate license, and so I saw some people were making more money than me and selling real estate back in those days, in the early 2000s especially. And so I went over to the brokerage side and worked for Lindsay and Associates. Was there for over 15 years doing the brokerage side. And then, like I said, in 2015, Farmers and Merchants Bank of Stuttgart acquired the Bank of Fayetteville. It was a great merger, and they kind of started recruiting me there. At that point in time, a lot of those people knew me and knew that I was in real estate here, and eventually talked me into switching again. Yeah. So I've been with Farmers Merchants Bank, or the Bank of Fayetteville, since 2017.
Okay. Yeah, fantastic. So you've seen all sides of the business. And been in and out of a lot of different deal structures, it sounds like.
Yeah, I remember having some conversations with my parents as an appraiser, telling them that realtors and bankers were giving me fits over stuff, and then as a realtor, telling them that appraisers and bankers were giving me fits. Yeah. Now I'm on the banking side, and so I understand all of those sides and how they work together to help each other out to get something done, to accomplish something.
We all have to be a little bit kumbaya and a little bit pokey on the side,
That's right.
At the same time. So
yeah.
It's kind of it's not a love-hate relationship, but it's like a love, Josh and each other kind of relationship a lot of times.
Right.
So, so you've got a Rookie Nook coming up.
Yeah.
And this is going to be on May 22nd, 2025. But we're going to be talking about managing investor credit, particularly for beginners. Let's talk about that just a little bit. How is it different? How does a bank look at your credit maybe differently as an investor versus if you're just purchasing a home or something?
Well,
to live in?
Don't know if they really look at it differently. We were talking before we started this. I brought up the C's of credit, something that I know they teach in some finance classes in high school and in college. I mean, it's one of the things that you'll learn is the 5 C's of credit. So your credit score is just one of those components that would fall under the character. Character would be one of the 5 C's of credit. Character is reflected in your credit score. Whether you're buying a home, whether you're buying a car, whether you're doing, making real estate investments. It is a measure of your history of making payments on time, obviously, just not being late and being consistent with that. And also how much credit you have available and how much you're using it. Are you fully maxing out your available credit, or are you just using part of it or something? And so
can we just bullet point the 5 C's real quick?
Sure. You've got character, capital, capacity, collateral, and conditions. Okay. And so again, your credit score kind of falls under the character, and it's what a lender would look at as far as your reputation for making your loan payments. So it's an important one of those characteristics of a loan. When we put together a credit proposal, it's a fairly good sized document that we put together, and sometimes have to do in a presentation to the loan committee or to the person that we report to get approval. And all 5 of those aspects are going to be touched on. So character, like I said, your not just your credit score, your repayment history. Are there any liens or judgments filed against you that would show up on a credit report? Also, being under character, have I heard anything in the news recently? That falls under character too. Did you embezzle money 2 years ago that made the news or something like that? Capacity would be one of the next ones, and capacity is some calculations that we run, DCR, DSCR calculations. Do you have the capacity to repay the loan?
And that's debt service coverage,
right?
By the way,
yeah, debt service coverage ratio. I see it DSCR, yeah. DCR, same thing. Capital is how much are you investing into the project. It can be a measure of liquidity that you have in your savings accounts, as well as how much money are you putting down into the project. So are you putting 5% down, 10% down, 15, 20% down, would show kind of how much capital you're investing into the project. And then collateral is kind of the obvious one. We're going to get an appraisal or an in-house evaluation and calculate a loan to value on the project. And then conditions. Conditions varies. It's kind of a wide topic. It can be the economy. Like if you came to me in the end of 2008 and 2009, what the market was then, and you wanted to build 20 spec houses, economic conditions at that point in time were probably not appropriate for that.
It might not have anything to do with the borrower.
Right. That's right. But other conditions can be the terms of the loan. Are you coming to me asking for a loan on a investment property and you want to amortize it for 50 years at 3% interest rate? Well, those conditions just don't work for us right now. Right. So, we would talk you through all of these and try to bring both sides together to where we can make a deal.
Sounds good. So, what about when you've got, let's say you've got a cash flowing property. Okay. And it's counting as income.
Sure.
Right. So that, how does that play into, and maybe someone's starting to build a portfolio,
yeah.
They're starting to have more income coming in. What we kind of see is sort of a snowball effect of those wins add on top of each other and make you more and more and more credit worthy.
Right.
Or at least your capacity to pay increases. Right?
So when we're calculating DSCRs, a lot of times we look at multiple layers. We're going to look at what we call the project-specific DSCR. I'm sorry if I call it DCR. I usually shorten it to DCR. But so the project-specific DCR would be, what is this property that you're purchasing going to look like as far as cash flow is concerned? However, if you've got 5 other properties that are all in this LLC that's going to be the borrower, then we'll look at that entity's total DSCR.
Okay.
And we'll do, here's what it is now with, say you have 5 properties. Here's what the DSCR is now with these 5 properties. Then we'll add in the project specific, the one that you're buying, and say, here's what it's going to look like when we add this one in. So yeah, the more you add to your portfolio, the more that can broaden. And you may have more than one LLC that owns different portfolios. You may have other LLCs that aren't just in real estate, but own a restaurant on the side or something like that too. And you may have another job, a W-2 job, that also provides additional income. So,
But all that adds to the ability to cover that
right
service.
That's right. So we don't get completely hung up on a specific DCR for project specific. We want to look at that and see what it's going to do to you. But if you're buying a project that's going to be really thin, a one-to-one DCR, meaning it's just breaking even, but you've got a W-2 job or another source of income where you make a lot of money, that doesn't stop us from doing this loan.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. And then, what should investors not do to make sure they're not hampering their credit standing in the future?
Yeah, I would say, your credit standing is going to be based off of making those payments on time, especially things like consumer loans and credit cards. Credit cards and car loans, boat loans, your home loans. As soon as you go past due, especially on credit cards, if you go past due one day, it's going to hit your credit score. Most home loans, you may have like a 10-day grace period or something. So you need to know if you do have a grace period, and you need to know specifically what those due dates are and just make sure that those payments are made on time and don't be late. On credit cards, I think a lot of people know this, you don't want to keep them maxed out all the time. If you've got a $10,000 credit card, you don't want the balance to be running at $8,000 or $9,000 every month. You want to have some room there. That also can help your credit score.
So just as an aside, in where we are right now in the current economy, are we starting to see difficulty for people in making certain payments?
We have. It usually starts with credit cards. That's one of the first things that weakens.
High.
Yeah. And it's also something that consumers, when they look at what they have to pay for every month to keep their life going, they have to pay for their house. Next would probably be their car if they have to get to and from work and stuff. That credit card payment sometimes can just slip by. And so, we have, I think nationally, we have seen some weakening in the credit card markets. But as far as our bank goes, we're looking pretty solid. Farmers and Merchants Bank's done a good job underwriting. We don't have huge amounts we do have a credit card product, but that's not a major part of our bank, and it hasn't been a issue.
Okay. So let's talk about how people can build on good credit practices over
Sure.
time. What are some of those best practices?
Yeah, I would say, especially after you have that first investment under your belt and it's generating some cash flow, would be to build some of those other C's of credit that we talked about. Build up some liquidity, build up some money that you can inject into the next project, more money. So, the lower the loan to value or the more down payment that you're putting into the project makes it a safer deal for the bank. Yeah. So that could affect your interest rate. If you're putting more money into a project and you've got a lot of liquidity, you likely could be looking at a better interest rate than somebody who is maxing out some of those limits. Right. Yeah. Have you ever heard that interest rate is a factor of risk?
Okay.
So, the riskier the deal, typically a bank is going to charge a higher interest rate for it. So the lower loan to value, the more money you've put into it, the more liquidity you have, probably should be the better interest rate that you're going to get. And then on the risk side, once you hit a certain threshold of so high, people are saying, hey, could I get a loan if it's going to be 11%, I'm desperate for it. Well, it's probably beyond the risk threshold that we want to do in the first place. So.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to your talk.
Yeah.
And everybody come on out. This is going to be our Rookie Nook on May 22nd, 2025. And definitely come on out. We typically get started at 5:30, doors open, and then we do a little bit of networking and get to know each other a little bit, and which is always a great thing for you rookies to take part of that. And then usually around 6, we'll kick off the program, and looking forward to this.
And this one's at Whole Hog, right?
I hope so.
So yeah. Hard to beat that. I
That's one
mean,
of
get
my favorite spots.
barbecue and learn some about loans.
Yep,
So,
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, come on out to the Rookie Nook coming up May 22nd, and we'll see you there.
looking forward to it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on, man.
You bet.
All right. Well, that's it for this episode. We'll catch you on the next one.